looks like, oh, we've popped into recording. So what that looks like in terms of you using the word sandwich generation is that you are in an age range where you're finding yourself taking care of younger children while also simultaneously taking care of aging parents that are requiring more for you to do, care for, need, provide support around, while also recognizing your kids are coming in with those some of the same challenges. You're kind of feeling like you're parenting in two spaces. Our goal is to, in today's workshop, talk about it in context to the AAPI culture specifically. So what that means is being someone who's part of the AAPI community or maybe connected to it or within a family that has those values, it's also understanding what was expected of you prior to even being in this moment. How are those thoughts and values impacting how you're showing up today in your own sandwich generation? Exploring the mental health impacts of caregiving. And what we mean by that is there's a lot of different factors that impact caregivers. We know that you may have even heard something called caregiver burnout, where that can fall in the guilt and the shame and worries around what it looks like to be enough as in a caregiver is something that we're going to be looking at as well. And just your own impact of, are you starting to have your own mental health symptoms as a result of what you're supporting at home? And then, of course, we always need hope, and hope looks like coping strategies and resources and knowing that while this is going to be a place that many people land in, it's not a place that you have to remain in, and it's not a place that you have to feel stuck in. So, yes, your children are going to need you. Yes, your parents may need you along the way, but there are absolutely options for you to ensure that you feel like you can move through this stage in a healthy way for yourself. And most likely, that isn't something that was modeled for you. So, we're really going to be teaching you something that you may not have learned in your own home and didn't even recognize was an option or opportunity for you. So showing up today, we really hope is going to allow for that discussion and awareness. We're going to move forward a bit. So we really wanted to start with an icebreaker, and so much of this is recognizing that if you showed up today, part of the reason may be that either this discussion is happening around you or that you're someone who's feeling directly impacted by that sandwich generation experience. So if you are, and I would love if anybody felt the desire or ability to just jump into our chat box, or even if you want to do it, interactively by speaking to me, letting us know what is a brief day in the life scenario that reflects your caregiving responsibilities, or someone around you who might be sharing with you that they're really feeling overwhelmed by this sandwich generation experience that I brought up earlier. I'm definitely going to bring something in for you in a minute or two if you don't feel like you have anything yourself, but I would love to hear if any of our participants today wanted to share something on their end. So we'll give you a minute or two to jump in there. Thank you, Shira, for putting that into our chat box. So while I'm not seeing anything immediately starting to trickle in for us, I'm going to bring in an example that I was recently brought into me. And I remember a quote somebody said to me, which is, I don't have time on Saturday for my parent to need me to take them to the emergency room. So I'm really going to need them to understand that they cannot go up and down the stairs independently at this time. And it made me smile because it was kind of said, of course, in sarcasm and humor, but what it really meant is I don't have time to be able to respond to an emergency right now. I have time to be able to show up for my parents. I have time to be able to support them, but I do not have time to be able to respond to urgency that they may be putting me in. So that brief day in the life scenario can look like I have to get up in the morning. I have to take care of my young children. I have to make sure that they're in all of their activities and sports, and I'm packing their bag and I'm making sure I can get them to the soccer game. And while I'm doing all of that, I'm also recognizing I have to go over to my parents' house 10, 20, 30 minutes away, and I have to check on them. And I have to make sure that they're not doing anything that they're not supposed to, which might mean that ultimately what I'm doing is trying to prevent them from doing things that are going to put themselves in danger. So now I'm doing a lot of their daily living for them before I can jump back into what I was already doing. You're kind of really having to switch hats back and forth on behalf of mothering and caregiving for an elderly parent. I see something coming in, so I just really want to check on it. But in that day in the life scenario, what we're really recognizing is you're doing a lot of caregiving both for children and for an elderly parent, and nowhere in there are you able to pause for yourself. And those scenarios can create a lot of mental gymnastics, a lot of exhaustion, and ultimately just the hope that you're preventing something greater from occurring, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you're able to enjoy those present moments along the way. I see an example that came in. So thank you for sharing. I have two school-age children. I work full-time from home. I have a side business. Wow. And I help my 77-year-old parents with some of their medical needs, tech needs, and etc. What frustrates me the most is that I have four other adult siblings, but I feel like my parents divert to me. So this end statement, I think, is really important to recognize, right? Is that not only do I have all of these things going on, but for some reason, even though I come from a family of multiple children, I find myself as kind of the identified child along the way to be able to support my parents. And I find myself being the one who has all of these things going on, but still feels like most of the responsibility is put on me. That's a very real concern and frustration that can happen in many households, that it can feel like there's one child, one adult child really having a lot of that responsibility placed on them. It could be due to proximity, it could be due to gender. We know gender is really big in the AAPI culture of what's expected both of men and women in our culture. But it could also just be that over time, parents have identified that child as the one who's really capable, competent, and most comfortable to them. And you may or may not have intended to do it, but you became that person who started to really become available to those needs. And now everybody's just in this familiar pattern that's really hard to break. We're going to talk a bit about that along the way because there are ways to say, I have to boundary set and I have to really think about what my role is in this family and what happens if I step back and create more space for other people to have a greater role. And when I'm reading that there's four other adult siblings, and of course, I don't know what their specifics are, what those scenarios look like. My hope is that that means even if some of those have a greater distance or proximity to your parents, it also means that there are things that they can do from a distance to be able to support the family members so that not all case planning and care management has to be placed on one person. And we can really think about shifting roles and responsibilities so that they're divided and conquered a bit better. So we're gonna, move forward from the icebreaker and talk a little bit more about specifics today. So I want to jump into cultural expectations. And in any of these presentations, you're going to hear me talk a lot about our AAPI cultural expectations, right? What does it look like to be part of our culture? What does it look like to have expectations placed on you that are AAPI specific? And what supporting your parents? I would imagine most households, whether you're first generation or you grew up, in another country and moved here as you got older, you probably saw most likely that there was an elder family member that either lived in the home with you or was going to be coming back and forth to the States to be cared for in your home, or your parent may have gone back to care for them. So what's often modeled in the AAPI culture is that as adult children, you take care of your parents. It is expected of you, it is assumed of you, and it's a role that you assume you'll take on at some point. What's hard in American culture is there's a lot of other roles and responsibilities that are also expected of you here. So you can find yourself navigating between both American culture and AAPI culture and saying, I'm having a really, really hard time navigating what's expected of me here, because we can also acknowledge that here, most in this country, we don't have the support systems that often are there in other countries. And so not only are you doing those day-to-day responsibilities for your parents, but you're also, usually taking care of your children's needs, taking care of the household needs, taking care of what's going on within your business or structure and what you're doing. And you're finding yourself probably depleted and unable to manage all of those parts. When I talk about cultural expectations, I would love to hear in the chat box what stands out most to you being a member of the AAPI community and what you feel is placed on you in our culture. In my awareness alone and the work that I've done and the studies I've done around this space, I just kind of brought some notes with me, not only about there being the strong values for our elders and our family duty, but there's a research center that kind of looked through this and brought it to the Asian American community specifically. And it said 60% of Asian Americans said that adult children have responsibility to take care of their aging parents. That is not the case in all cultures in America. But what we know about our AAPI culture is that it really works as a collective. And we know that that's a strength for our culture. We know that it's something that probably has supported so many beautiful parts of what we've been able to do. But the other side of that is you don't always have opportunity to take care of yourself. And it's assumed that if you do, there's a negative connotation to it. Often that can be considered selfish. It could be considered a separation from the community. It could be looked down upon. And that can really place a lot of guilt on you, which we're going to talk about in a moment. But I'm wondering, again, if we can jump into the chat box, if anybody for themselves can really acknowledge what they have felt is a cultural expectation for them when caring for their parents or when caring for elders in their family, and what role and responsibility they've assumed they've had to take on as an adult member in our community. Just reading the statement from earlier when there was discussion about medical needs and tech needs. Thank you. We'll get number 4 showing. Yeah. Just recognizing that statement earlier, what it really tells me is there's an assumption that I have to remain available to my family members, primarily my parents, to be able to respond to what their daily needs of living are, which means I have to prioritize what they need, and therefore what I need may need to come after. What my duty is, and that word duty is really big in our community, right? What does it mean to be the good son or the dutiful daughter? What that can really look like is that I have a role and responsibility in this family that I am expected to meet, and I'm expected to meet it regardless of what it's going to place on me. Because what I need, my mental health, my emotional needs, my physical needs, are not prioritized when I'm here to prioritize those of others. So both my children, my parents, and even my partner would be prioritized over myself, because at the end of the day, I am expected to somewhat await what I need. And a lot of times that's what elders will say, is that I didn't really get to take care of myself when I was your age. I was expected to send money back home. I was expected to care for others. And therefore, I didn't really get to prioritize what I needed or what I felt. So it's almost a luxury to be able to think about what you need and what you would want for yourself. And that experience of it being a luxury can also lead to discussion about it feeling like, ooh, am I somewhat guilty for recognizing that I want something? Am I guilty for being tired? Am I guilty for not wanting to make this phone call today to a doctor's office? And so when you really take in awareness of our culture and awareness of our collective, what also happens is you start to really create a structure for yourself of how you assume you have to live each day and care for each member of your family. When we think about this word filial piety, and it's something that came up earlier when I was doing a little bit of research on sandwich generation, it was discussing emphasizing respect, obedience, and care for one's parents and elders. It's forming the foundation of a family and societal harmony. It's a really beautiful thought, but when you really look at translating that into a lived experience in the world and the community that we live in, you can only imagine the pressures you're feeling when you can't actually reach that within yourself. So you're now defining that this was expected of me. These were core values that were placed in me. Some were unconscious, some were conscious, some were very verbally discussed. And then you're going, I can't meet these day to day because when I went to pack my child's lunch, get to my meeting on time, maybe even show up to this lunch and learn, and then also recognize I still have to call my parents' doctor to see what medication they're on. I have to follow up and get them an appointment in a few days. They couldn't figure out how to check their cell phone the other day. And so I have to make sure that they know how to use their phone in case an emergency comes up. Now I'm stuck between all these roles that I'm trying to manage, and somehow I'm feeling like I can't manage them. And I feel like I'm failing at this goal I have, which is this expectation that was placed within me that I'm trying to do both roles and I can't do them, while also recognizing I may somewhere along there have a need, but I can't meet that need for myself. So that goes into the space of guilt and shame, struggling to balance your cultural expectations while having your personal needs. I always start talking about guilt and shame in a therapeutic space of recognizing they're two really different things. Guilt is really this awareness that I can feel bad for something that's happening, right? I can feel bad that I said I would bring something to your house and I forgot it, but it doesn't mean that I'm bad because I forgot that thing that I said I would bring. Shame says, you're a pretty horrible person for doing what you did. You're really bad because you never bring things when you say you will. It really puts you down. It knocks you down along the way. It's really important to know what that inner voice is saying to you when you're thinking about this in the sandwich generation topic or truly in any topic. But for this specific topic, that guilt says all the time, I cannot keep up with the things that I'm doing. I feel horrible that I missed my child's soccer game because I ran my parents to another doctor's appointment or because I attended a meeting I had to attend because I missed it the other day when my parents needed to, have me take them to get a medication. You're finding yourself recognizing that no matter what, you're going to drop a ball along the way and you're feeling really bad about it. And that can be constant sometimes if you're trying to manage and navigate different roles for so many different people. Shame along the way will say, if you do this enough times, this is becoming who you are. You're not someone who can manage everything you're supposed to do. Somehow the generations that came before you did it. Somehow the peers around you are doing it, because a lot of people don't talk about caregiving dynamics as a space that actually is impacting their daily life. It might feel like something they're doing all the time, but they're not visibly seeing it to the degree that you might see yourself driving to your kids' games or getting to a work meeting. Because making doctor's appointments during the day or calling someone on behalf of your parents might not feel as tangible as those other things that you're doing. So then it starts to come in and say, oh my goodness, I can't keep up with the things that I'm doing. I'm not enough, because if I was, I would be able to manage all those spaces. I really want to emphasize the importance of recognizing both and recognizing how much, when you're feeling these stressors all of the time, they can really start to impact these mental health factors for you. I would love to hear, and I know I'm asking so much of everybody here on this rainy day, but I would love to hear if anybody's really recognizing that the guilt and the shame pieces are coming up around trying to balance all of those needs, and what you're noticing being a parent in the community while also trying to manage those needs of your parents, and recognizing that it can be really overwhelming day to day to have to jump into both spaces all the time and really prioritize all of those spaces all the time, and what that voice of guilt can sound like for you when you're not able to keep up with it, and what it might be saying to you when you're not able to keep up with it. So Gina, I'm just gonna see, we can give everybody a moment, or even if something comes in for either you or Shira that you want to share, that just really feels like it connects to this space, because I think personal examples are such an important part of what we're doing in these lunch and learns, to really remind one another that this information is so important, but knowing that the community is experiencing it is even more important. Thank you. I see something coming in. I'm the eldest of four siblings, children living in New Jersey, three younger brothers, and the only one in the US. Have a 2.5-year-old. Petitioned for my mom's LPR twice. My mom helps with our toddlers. I work from home in the interim and have to be back in the office soon. So all of that to go, wow, first of all, you're doing so much all the time. So you're the eldest of four. So that already tells me that you have a really important role in the family that's assumed of you as the oldest, which means that you have held this responsibility, not just now in life, but for quite some time in life. Being the eldest daughter to four siblings, recognizing you have brothers, and oftentimes in the AAPI culture, there is an assumed responsibility as a woman and there's an assumed responsibility for men. And at times, it can really be assumed that as a woman, you can kind of stretch yourself in certain spaces without needing to focus on it and talk about it and have a need along the way. And then being the only one in the US, I imagine that that comes with its own expectations because it might be assumed that you can navigate the system in a way that your siblings can't. And therefore, there's just a lot more responsibility on you while also going, wait a second, I'm having to manage the climate out there of going back to office and having certain workloads placed on you right now. And that doesn't even get to be recognized because all of the other parts of the expectation are already placed on you, and your story doesn't really get to be a part of the story at all. That can really start to lead you into feeling a lot of guilt of, okay, now I have to do all of these things. I don't think I'm going to be able to manage them to the degree that I'm expected to or wanting to, and therefore I'm going to have to let someone down. It's either going to be my mom at times, or it's going to be my toddler, or it's going to be my partner. Someone is not going to get the degree of me that they need from me, and it's going to be really hard for me when I'm going to have to fall short. And so I may even try really hard to not fall short for anyone. And in doing that, I might find myself feeling really overwhelmed or even burnt out along the way because I'm trying so hard to stretch myself to a bandwidth that I don't really believe I can. But everyone around me is assuming I can. So I keep trying over and over again. I'm conjecturing a bit. I know that that might not be specific to your actual experience when you write about it, but I'm really recognizing that these are the thoughts and feelings and experiences you can have along the way when this is the beginning part of your story. And also, just the two shares that I've seen come in so far really show me how much our community is navigating and how much our community is assuming that they have to navigate it. And being South Asian myself, I can acknowledge that this is often a topic that isn't even given any attention. Whether I'm around family members or friends in the community, what I recognize is talking about sandwich generation, talking about aging parents doesn't even seem like an area that anyone thinks they need to talk about because they just assume you have to do. And because it was something you had to do, you don't think that it's something that you're actually supposed to talk about along the way. You're just kind of supposed to get it done and check it off the list like other things in the community. We talk about petitioning and having family members here, some family members who have to go back and forth. Also, just recognizing that depending on when your parents came here and how long they're here, language barriers are a part of it. Navigating our health systems, recognizing that growing up in this country or knowing how to navigate this country through clarity of language versus a parent who may not can absolutely create systemic issues for disparity in care. And if you're someone who's aware of that, you're more likely to want to involve yourself in your parents' care, which then means, okay, I have young children who can't advocate for themselves, who wouldn't know what questions to ask for themselves, and who are going to need me to take them to their appointments. Now I have elderly parents who, in theory, could drive themselves to these appointments or attend these appointments on their own, but I don't trust that they're going to be able to ask the questions they need to ask. I don't trust that the system's actually going to support what they need unless I'm there to say, hey, look, I'm an advocate on behalf of my parent. I don't trust that they're going to get the resources that they need along the way unless I show that I have awareness of the system and I know what questions to ask. So navigating the health system for elders, especially elders who are not able to communicate as effectively in the languages here, really then creates another barrier to our care. Shara, thank you for bringing, another piece in. I work with a lot of migrant families as a grassroots organizer, and they balance so much from fears of deportation, financial issues, and even running a family. And thank you for bringing examples. So one of the parents just returned home because their own mother passed, and they've been struggling with even managing their own family. I see them balancing and struggling to ask help from the community, a sense of shame and cultural self-reliance. Yes, that idea that all of these things can be happening for one person and that they're assumed that you just have to get through them and that you just have to hold them and take them on. And these are really big fears. I really want to say, we have big T's and little T's when we talk about trauma. Those are some big T's right there, right? Fears of deportation, coming into financial issues, financial scarcity along the way, and running your family at the same time. When you're going through all of those things at the same time and you're trying to have clarity of mind and making healthy choices for your family, you're being asked to do something you cannot do. So immigration factors are real. Disparity of care is real. Recognizing that you are not always in a system that is there to support what you need unless you're aware of what you need first, and having to be fearful along the way that you may or may not share something that can be concerning. I mean, that's a big thing that came up for me as a NICU social worker back when I was there, is really recognizing there's communities who have immigrated here who say, well, if I share X, Y, or Z, am I going to have a phone call made? Is somebody going to come into my home? I don't want to share anything that could get me in trouble. So therefore, I'm not going to share that I'm depressed right now. I'm not going to share that, I wasn't able to buy dinner last week, because that could really become problematic. Because what I've learned is that not all systems are here to support depending on who that person is that they're supporting. And so these are real. So when you have a parent saying, and everybody's probably, if you've heard me speak before, I don't love the word just, because I just need to have you make a phone call. I just need you to pick up groceries for me. I just need you to help me figure out how to get email on my phone. All of those just asks are big asks on you, but depending on the severity of outcome, if you do or do not help, can really feel like a weighted responsibility. So immigration factors are huge. Needing support around care management and case management is one of the biggest needs in our community, but finding providers who you can trust along the way to help you and who will be able to speak your language is something a lot of elders have difficulty with. And so you'll find yourself trying to take that role on, even when you don't have capacity to take that role on. And then our last one, which is role reversal, which I know did get cut off a little bit. Gina, are you able to? And if not, I'll open it up on my slide. Here we go. So it's really, coming in and navigating the shift in caregiving dynamics with parents. So what that means is, somehow at one point they were my parents, and now I'm finding myself in a parentified role with my parents. I'm finding myself saying, did you eat your dinner last night? Did you call your doctor back today? They've asked you to, go to physical therapy. Have you been able to make those appointments? Are you going to your physical therapy? Are you doing the homework that they said so that you're able to have more mobility? Are you getting out into the community so that cognitively I know that you're able to still, stay capable and sharp? All of those things become a role reversal because now you're parenting the parent. And that is really, really overwhelming to do when you just asked your school-age child, did you do your homework? Did you eat your dinner? Did you take a shower today? Have you brushed your teeth today? You're doing that caregiving in all spaces. And most likely you're finding yourself really sandwiched between taking care of your adult parents, taking care of your younger children, and really going, where in between all of this is there space for me? And then let's go back to number one in this. Well, cultural expectation. I shouldn't need space for me. This is not the time my parents had space for themselves. So I should assume that right now it is my turn to have to take care of everyone else. And I should be able to put my own needs on hold. And when I cannot, or when I'm feeling overwhelmed about it, let's go to number two. I feel that guilt and shame again. So you can see how they all play into one another because they're all really kind of integrated and they don't work as a step 1 to 4. They're fluid. We go back and forth through them as you're experiencing each one of them, depending on what's going on at each time for you. But most likely they're starting to layer and layer, and you're not really sure where to cut through and what to pause and focus on. We're going to move forward a little bit. That was a lot I just threw at everybody. If you have any questions, please, please, please ask, or if you have any comments, please throw them in. So, what are your mental health impacts along the way? There is a recognition that our mental health is something that often we're not talking about, we're not paying attention to enough. We always say in this field, as a therapist, if you hurt your leg, if you hurt your knee, you would most likely make a doctor's appointment. It's pretty unlikely that you would allow yourself to stay in pain or stay without mobility. And most likely you'd have to get it managed because you wouldn't be able to do a lot of the other things you're responsible for. But what happens when we start to feel overwhelmed, when we start to feel anxious, when we start to recognize I'm not sleeping well, I'm not eating well, I'm tired all the time, I'm a little bit more irritable with my partner, I'm not really spending time with friends, I'm not going to the gym like I used to. We don't really do anything about those things. We just assume that it's something that we have to quote unquote get through, or maybe it's even that classic line, when this passes, things will get better. I'm sure everyone has heard themselves say that at some point. And we recognize most things don't pass, they just get replaced with something else in their spot. And you end up in burnout, right? So what does burnout really look like? Has anybody here experienced burnout before? Would you know if you were? And would you know what it feels like and looks like in your own life? I think it's important, and Gina and Shire, I'd love for you to chime in because I know you're doing such important work for AAPI, but I know that you're also doing work outside of AAPI. So I can imagine that burnout is something, regardless of stage of life and what you have going on, everyone at some point has recognized they've experienced in themselves. So I'm going to just give you a moment to notice in yourself if there's something you want to share that's brought in burnout for you, or when you recognize that you felt it yourself and how you would know. I often in myself can identify it from a place of knowing that I'm feeling a little less enthusiasm over a lot of the things that I'm doing. Things that I noticed previously I'd be excited to do, I'm finding myself feeling like it's a chore or responsibility. And things that socially would bring me joy, I would find myself trying to navigate how to not be a part of. And what that can look like is I'm not really in a place where I can offer to be on right now. And because of that, I noticed that I must really be moving in the direction of burnout because I'm not really feeling a ton of joy. I'm feeling like I just need to focus on that task list. If I can just get these things done, then maybe at some point I can get to the place where I'm feeling that excitement again. And when that starts to happen, it's a true check-in with self of, okay, I really have to stop it all and really take a look at how to navigate these different parts of self so that I can really start to understand, where do boundaries need to come in? Where do my professional parts need to come in? Where do my personal parts need a little bit more attention? So that I can really ensure that this burnout doesn't lead to anything physical. It doesn't lead to a mental health decline. It doesn't lead to a health decline, because we know that all of that can occur from burnout if we don't pay attention to it. That guilt and self-criticism. I feel inadequate because I'm not meeting all these expectations. In the AAPI culture, we know that feeling inadequate is a part of it, right? Because these expectations, this bar, it's high on you. This idea that we're gonna do the model minority in the next few weeks, this idea that I'm able to do it all, rise to the challenges that are expected of me, be a high functioning and high performing citizen in community, be a parent that's able to manage what they feel, not emote a ton, because being in the AAPI community also means that I have my emotions under control. And when I feel things, I don't have to feel them in a big way. I can hide them, I can suppress them, I can push them down, and they can be quiet. And so when I start to feel guilt and self-criticism come in, I have to quiet that voice. I really have to turn its volume down, because I'm not able to give it the attention it deserves. Because in my community, I was told that if you do that, it's problematic, that you're not representing the community in a way you were intended to. And Shira and Gina, I see that you brought in some thoughts. I just want to look at them. Yeah. So this idea, feeling like I'm missing out on my 20s and banking on my physical health for holding me up. Missing out on your 20s, right? This idea that in this community, I'm expected to do all of these things right now. And because I'm young and because I'm able and because I have my health and my energy level, I should be able to take a loss for the parts of my developmental stage that I'm really deserving of right now. That I shouldn't focus on those things because right now this should be able to give this part of myself to all of the things that I'm doing. And that no one in the community says, no, you're actually young and you're in your 20s and you really should enjoy the youth that you have right now and really allow yourself to take a little bit more space up for yourself. And you don't have to work two jobs. You don't have to do all of those things. And some of it is really a decision point of, do I want to be doing all of these things right now? And where am I hopeful they're going to lead me? Am I pausing to think about that? Or am I just kind of on this train to burnout and I'm not really sure what it looks like to do something different? And before working at AAPI New Jersey, I was a classroom teacher, experienced a lot of empathy burnout. Yes. So there's a lot of empathy burnout, right? This idea that empathy is so beautiful because we get to take on this experience of, I'm going to feel what you feel. I'm going to join in with that emotion with you. But when I do that over and over and over again, and I don't actually think about the impact of what I'm feeling, what I'm really doing is essentially experiencing a vicarious response to what you have going on for you. And I'm not doing the process work within myself to recognize the impact of it. I often say, as a mental health clinician, we're so fortunate to be reminded that to do this work, we have to do the work for ourselves. So people will say to me, I can't believe you're able to listen to X amount of people a week. Well, I can do it because I know along the way I have to go to my own therapy. I have to go to my own supervision groups. If I have a tough session, I have tools of self-care along the way. I know how to say to my family members, hey, today's not a day I'm going to be able to check in. It was a tough day, but if there's something you need, please text it over to me and I can respond to you tomorrow. There's a lot of ways that you learn to ask for what you need while still being able to show up and not having to burn yourself out along the way to do that. But in our community, when that wasn't taught to you, you have to find ways to learn it. For me, it was, of course, through the profession that I chose. But for everyone showing up today, it's showing up in spaces like this and going, oh, wow, there's really tools, really small, accessible tools for me to teach myself how to step back and ask for what I need. Isolation, so limited time for personal relationships or self-care. This is what I'm hearing a lot right now. I know that on a macro level, we are in a tough space right now. There's a lot of worry out there. There's a lot of financial concerns. There's a lot of concerns about impacts of job security. And then you take in what you have going on just in a micro level in your own life. It's scary. And when you're dealing with all of that, you might find yourself feeling like, I'll just kind of stay on this hamster wheel because both macro and micro, I'm not sure where things are going to slow down a bit. And as a result, I'm not going to go to the gym as much. I'm not going to schedule that dinner with my friends that I did a few months ago. I'm not going to worry about, asking my partner to support me to sleep in on Saturday because, hey, what's an extra 2 hours going to do? It's not going to solve anything else. And so we really start to isolate from our own family members, but we also start to isolate from our community outside. And the things that were really in small doses, bringing a ton of those things from you, it can really start to lead to mood shifts, right? This is where we recognize those depressive symptoms can start to come in because when we start to isolate and we know just inherently the need for connection and community in minds because you really start to feel like all you have is a job. I have a job taking care of my children. I have a job going to work every day. I have a job taking care of my parents. And it no longer becomes relational. And it becomes so much around and grief and loss, managing the loss of independence for both caregivers and elders. So you're really experiencing that, bearing witness to your parents who at one point were getting up in the morning, going to work, able to care for you, able to care for their family members, to now going, I don't really know how to make this phone call. I'm not really sure how to navigate this next appointment. They gave me 3 different prescriptions. I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do with them. And you're really seeing your family members starting to decline into a more regressive role where you go, wow, I really do have to manage these things. Their eyesight isn't what it used to be. Their cognitive capability isn't what it used to be. And so now I'm really finding myself having to caregive for them, but I'm also grieving the parent they once were. And I'm grieving my role as their child because now I'm really feeling myself having to take on the role of their parent. And when you're taking all of those on, we know that grief and loss and the symptoms of them often mimic those of depression. And so you can feel a lot of that within yourself while you're managing those spaces for your caregiver or for your elders and taking on that role of caregiver. And this is why naming it, talking about it, identifying it. I want to be careful about saying normalizing, but at least being able to find a place where saying this is very real and this is very true to occur is important because by just doing those things, you're creating some relief for yourself. We're going to kind of move forward. So if you have anything, I know I've asked a ton and we have about 12 minutes left. We're probably going to move forward past this one, but I want you to put it in the chat box. If you have any experiences with caregiving that you want to bring in, if you have any experiences with caregiving that you really want us to highlight in here, we are happy to do that and I'm happy to bring some attention to it. Feel free to throw that in the chat box and then we're going to just go ahead and move forward a little bit from here. So we're just going to move it. Thank you. Okay. So strategies for coping and some support. This is where your hope comes in because I share a lot of heavy things in the beginning of our work, recognizing that in the community, as an AAPI member, you're coming in with so many thoughts about who you are, and what's expected of you because of being a member of the AAPI community. And as a result, most likely there were not even languages for things like coping, support, the word boundaries, right? It's a word that often would not be used in our community because boundaries are not something to uphold, they're not something to have, and they're not something that would be considered respectable. If anything, they may even be considered somewhat selfish to be able to utilize for yourself. But we really want to talk about what does it mean to set boundaries in healthy ways when you're balancing both personal needs with caregiving duties. So you go earlier to this, this example that was given to us, right? I have 4 other siblings. I'm the only one here in the States. I'm really finding myself navigating all of these different challenges, and I'm not necessarily so sure how to set boundaries for myself when I'm really the only one here. So to that, I might say, okay, let's really look at what is being expected of you. Yes, day to day, I can imagine there's a ton of responsibility that's being placed on you being the only one here. But I might ask you to zoom out and say, what are the day-to-day expectations that you're managing in a week? What are you managing in a month? And what do you think might come up? And in that, I might say, okay, siblings, these are the things that I'm going to have to do. I have to fill out these forms in the next 2 to 3 months. I have to figure out what medications to manage. These changes might be occurring financially. I'm going to have to go ahead and give each one of you a responsibility that you're going to be able to perform from there. And these are the ones that I'm going to do from here. So mine might be the day to day because I'm in the same home and this family member, and I may need to take them to the appointments they need to go to. But I'm really going to need you to come in on a couple of these areas. And I may need to also decide what I'm going to allow to let go. That's the hardest thing, right? What am I going to say may or may not get to occur and be okay with that? So in my household, we have, my parents often come to me as a social worker and say, hey, can you do X, Y, and Z? One of the things I really had to say is these are what I'm really good at. These are the things I'm not so great at. And it's okay if you have to find yourself navigating outside of the home to get support with this. So you take the cell phone, for instance. I 100% know that I'm not great at it anymore. My parents assume I am because I'm younger than them. I've had to say I'm not great at it, but I know the Apple Store is really great at giving out free classes. I think it's a great place for you to go. It's not that I'm saying no to you, but it's actually me saying, I don't think I can do as much as you think I can for you. And so to not help you because I may look as frustrated as you do, and that's not going to be healthy for your relationship with me. But it's also not me saying, no, I won't do it. It's me saying, no, I'm not able to do it for you. And that's a really important piece to say, is that this just really isn't something I'm able to do for you. But I also hear that you have 3 bills you're really confused on how to navigate. I understand you may not want to have someone outside of the home help you with that. That is something that I'm able to jump in on, and I can make these phone calls Wednesday of next week for you, because those are not as urgent as you might feel like they are, and really reinforcing that over and over again. It's a bit of a teaching, right? Of how can I reinforce this over and over again, so you know you can really am able to care for myself along the way. And if I'm able to do that, I'm navigating what do I need for myself too. Self-compassion, and how am I going to reduce my self-criticism along the way? So what do I actually believe I can do? Let me take the structure that I have. I have a business. I have these needs that I have to support my children. I want to be able to take go so that my children are able to effectively support me as I get older, but don't have to caretake me if I'm caretaking those things right now. So me really recognizing a greater service to those around me because I'm able to show up as a healthier whole self. Building my support network. So that's engaging family, community, or professional support. Engaging your family is recognizing who plays what role in this family, what is my role for them, and what is their role for me, and how can we navigate discussions with each other to open up this area of support. Community. We have this amazing AAPI New Jersey. I'm still in awe that we have it and that it's been created and that it continues to flourish in the way that it does. Connect with your community, go to your community events, log on to services like this that are available to you, and then navigate having a discussion with someone else in your community after this. Because most likely, if you're feeling this, someone else around you is too. And they're just looking for someone to bridge this conversation with. When you do that, you just created a source of identification. You speak my language, I speak your language. By being members of the API community, most likely, not always, but most likely, we have some areas that are going to cross over that just have lived in our household because it was modeled for both of us, or our communities assumed it about us, or someone else brought this information to us. And now we have a shared language that we can have with each other. When we do that, we know that we feel so much relief along the way because we don't feel alone and we reduce isolation. Professional support, therapy, going into support groups, logging on to lunch and learns, navigating any type of discussion that is outside of yourself to be able to really understand this in a reflective manner is really, really important. Accessing resources, information about respite care, support groups, culturally competent therapists. All of those are available to you much closer than you may recognize. At the end of this, we do have a slide that's going to be sent out to you with multiple resources available to start looking into services that are out there for our community, that speak our languages, that have interpreters available for your parents, to know that you are not the only one available to do all of the things you might feel like you've had to do so far. And that when you're able to pause and think it through, you really may be able to build a new system that really supports your own care more. And the key takeaway is to avoid burnout. So we're going to go to that next slide, Gina. Thank you. So that really comes in with prioritizing self-care without guilt. Remember that caring for yourself allows you to take care of others. It's not something we were often told growing up. It's not something that was probably modeled for you. It is something you are going to model on behalf of your parents, and it's something you are going to model on behalf of your children, because this is also how we break cycles in the AAPI community. When you start to show that self-care has value, that it serves not just yourself, but it serves your community as well, what you're doing is modeling for your children that it's healthy for mom or dad to be able to go to the gym in the morning. It's healthy for mom or dad to be able to take that walk on a Saturday afternoon with a friend and separate from their family. It's healthy for your parents to see you say, hey, I'm actually going to go play this sport today, and then I'll give you a call in a few hours, rather than with this sense of urgency that they may have for you to be able to support them on something. And when you do that and still show up, you might even show up with a healthier mind, everyone's going to go, wow, there's really something to be said about caring for yourself before just jumping in and helping. Communicate openly with family members about caregiving expectations and limits. You can only communicate effectively if you actually know what your own expectations and limits are. This is where you taking a pause for yourself and recognizing what you need, recognizing what your own self-talk has said, recognizing what was modeled for you is saying to you, and all the messaging that you carry has, and then separating it and saying, how do I want to show up? What do I want this to look like for my mom and dad? And what do I want this to look like for my kids? And then really writing it down and saying, what expectations do I have for myself, but what limits do I want to set? So I actually have a plan to work off of. When we don't know, we don't change. And so we really can only start that when we stop and pause to think about it. Seek support early. When is early? The first call you get, that's early. Maybe even before that. If you start today thinking, hey, my parents are getting older, I'm noticing they're slowing down a bit. I imagine at some point it's going to be harder for them to get to their appointments. Start looking into that now. What do I financially need to help them with? What do I need to have them set up? What do they need to move closer? Do I need to move them closer? Is there something within the system that's already not working that we can start to change? And really starting to say, hey, I'm putting some things into place on your behalf and my behalf, so that we all have some system in place to ensure that we're really guardrailing our home and we're not just responding to crisis over time. That is where prevention is always more ideal than the recovery in the end. And allow yourself to acknowledge and process complex emotions like resentment, grief, and guilt. All of them will exist. They will coexist. You will experience all of them. You will move through all of them. They are fluid. None of our emotions remain in a fixed state. And as mental health professionals, we're also very aware now that what we used to name in a certain order no longer works in a certain order. So you don't hit one stage and go, okay, I'm just waiting to get to stage two. It's now awareness that today I feel grief. Tomorrow I felt guilt. I might feel resentment after that. And then maybe in 4 days, I'm going to really feel so much, pride and praise and gratitude to my parents. I just find myself working through all of these emotions all at the same time. Allow yourself to move through them, but give yourself a space to say them out loud, because all of those things are so important and they can really feel like a sense of relief when you're able to do them. I know that these were all big and tall asks that I threw out there today to avoid burnout, but part of it is really, again, going back to that early on slide to really say, these are all areas I want you to think about and focus on as you're navigating being part of the sandwich generation, as you may support friends and family members who are in it, and normalizing more community and conversation to talk about it so we can talk about what resources are out there, and we can talk about them specific to what was modeled for you and what was said to you in your own home, in your own upbringing. I said a lot, so I'm going to take a pause. I think our next slide is going to be with some resources available on it. So these resources for support are going to come out to everyone from Shira. I'm really excited that we do have a lot out there. Our practice is right here in Montclair. I remind everybody that whether or not you work with our practice, we are always a resource to you in the community. So please outreach to us. If you're just trying to figure out, where do I start? What do I need first? We are here to answer those questions for you. You don't know what you don't know, and the first step is to just be able to have a place to know that you can ask those questions. AAPI New Jersey is really here showing us that they want to be that support in the community. They want to field those questions for you. Part of these lunch and learns are, what is our community asking for? What is our community talking about? And these are the topics that we're talking about. And we really want to remain now a stepping stone to the next step you're going to take from here today. Gina, I'm going to invite you back in.
Yeah, well, before I kind of close this out, Sweat, I want to highlight something in the chat. I'm not sure if you saw
Yeah,
it.
please.
Um, but someone said this workshop was very helpful for me to understand the AAPI community. So I'm able to understand and help participants of this community who may be engaged in my mental health ministry at my parish. Thank
Oh,
you.
that's amazing. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I mean, that is the point of these spaces, right? For us to talk and share and to bring in information that maybe wasn't brought in yet. And when we bring it into one person, we know that they're going to bring it back to their community. And that's really what allows for all of these bridges to services coming out. So thank you so much for saying that and attending today. It means a lot. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. We will follow up with those resources in an email. And yeah, please feel free to take advantage of any of those. And Shira, I don't know if you have it on hand, but if you just want to throw in the registration link for our next Mental Health Monday session, I think if folks want to register for that next month, that would be
Yeah, so our next workshop is all about the model minority myth, really talking about what that looks like in our community, what that's been, really kind of the history of it, and where we are today and where we're going to be going, and what we hope to really speak about and break cycles around in our next in the upbringing of our children.
perfect. Thank you, Shira,
Thank you.
for that link. So please come join us at our next one, everyone. Thank you for attending today. I know Mondays are tough and a rainy one at that. Um, and take care, everybody.
Thank you. Have a great Monday. All right. Bye-bye.